Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is the True Hzrdus PX4, which is labeled right there, blocker review. So I already did kind of a comparison review a little bit to this one when I originally got it. I have used this quite a bit now, probably have 30 skates-ish in it, and I got to use it in a couple tournaments as well as actual good games where I really wanted to test this out because my summer hockey isn't really games, it's more of shinny stuff. So I really wanted more of a higher paced thing where the opponents are taking slap shots and really trying to score. I've gotten enough use out of this now so I can do a full review on it, and we're going to talk about it and give it a little bit comparison against this one because there are differences. So I'll kind of compare some of those differences and we'll kind of just dive into maybe which one you'd prefer or which one you should look at depending on your experiences with these gloves. So now, before we begin anything, huge thanks to the people at True who made this blocker review and this whole set review happen. They sent me this review so I could make content on it and do reviews and test them out and give feedback. So huge thanks to them for making that possible. It is greatly appreciated on my end. Now, before we jump into everything on this review, I have a slight question for blockers for you. All these companies now are doing basically multiple different blocker options. Most have 3 now. True has this board, they have this board, which is the new 615. Bauer has at least 3 different options. Bryant's has 3 different options. What are your thoughts on different blocker options? Is it a good thing that companies are giving you the option to go with different styles? Or do you think a company should kind of put all their bread in one basket, make it the best possible piece of equipment there is? That is a one-size-fits-all thing. So I always like the choice. I always like people being able to choose different things because I find pros and cons to each different idea. But I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that. So starting off with the most important thing, which is the graphic. And this whole set was done from my producer. I wanted to do a retro Coyote set. I actually originally designed a Vaughn SLR4 set in the Coyotes Kachina, which is these colors. I decided not to go that route. And then when I had the opportunity for this set, I instantly jumped on it. My producer helped me do this set. I asked her to take a look at options on there while I was playing, and she was doing it in the stands, and she ended up coming up with a pretty awesome design, which is what this is. Now, the Hzrdus line, and I'll show a picture of the different zones right now, has been extremely polarizing in terms of making graphics that people just honestly don't like and are kind of all over the place. This is very much a geometric shape. I like it, and I have seen some solid designs. I think this graphic looks fantastic in its current iteration of what I did here. But I definitely can see why people don't like where some of the little designs are, where I can see issues where little kind of hooks like this and pieces like this, where if you want to make it really clean and just kind of go all the way across, you can't on a bunch of parts. But I found that you just have to be a bit creative with it and you can make some solid designs. I had about 4 different options of this that I really liked, and I was very happy to go with. I ultimately decided on this one, and I'm a huge fan of it, but I can definitely see why people were critical of it. And personally, the Catalyst line, I think the graphics are kind of on another level compared to the Hzrdus for this one, but you can do some good graphics. It just takes effort, and it isn't the easiest thing to make look really, really nice. And you want to support the channel, and you need a base layer and a protective, kind of supportive base layer that helps protect your growing as well as your hips. Check out the Cortec. This is the Pro 1.0 pant, so this one is not quite as restrictive, and this is kind of tight right here in this X pattern. You might have seen these as Under Armour before, or Bauer for the hockey specific ones. There's also the Core 3.0, which is a lot stiffer, as you can see. Really helps protect my growing and keeping it kind of in place and make sure it doesn't overstretch itself. There's a discount code, and you click the link in the description. Use that discount code to get a discount off, help support myself, as well as get you some pretty awesome base layer pants that really do help with injury prevention and help stabilize your core while playing. Now on to the actual important things on this. There are changes on these 2 boards, and you can see them at this stage right here. So this sidewall did change, and you can see this on another view, which I'll show off in a second, where it kind of sticks out. This was always sewn inside the board right here, where this one kind of came out a little bit more and sticks out a bit more, and it kind of becomes a side piece. And we'll kind of show off how that stiffness is in a second as well. But you can also see a slight difference in terms of overall shape. The Hzrdus PX4 or 9X4 on this as well just has a bit more of a curve to it at the top. This is kind of harder to see, but when you kind of line the bottoms up like this and you pull it up, you can see how that Hzrdus one is a bit more aggressive right there in the overall board shape. And we look on the other side, you can see generally similar thicknesses. One thing that kind of has changed, I feel a little bit, you can see there is a little bit of give on this board here. And on this one, there is a bit of give as well, but it does feel like it's less than what is on the Hzrdus, to be totally honest. It's not a huge difference, and both of them aren't the hardest boards, but the Catalyst board did feel like it was a bit stiffer right there. Now, it didn't affect performance, which I'll talk about in a second. Now, speaking of the shape though, this is something I noticed on this blocker that I really liked. I've been giving a lot of credit to Brian's recently for their genetic blocker in terms of this board and how much easier with their shape. I felt like it was really controllable for rebounds. This one feels that way as well. Specifically, anything you get kind of up here, you can control it a lot better. And I found myself kind of punching low into the corner more than what I have felt previously. I'm sure people can do that no problem with this one, but I did find that little more aggressive shape and just how the hand sits on the board made it easier to control those and push those away. Now, when pucks kind of get lower on the board, you don't really have that shape piece to help you with that. And it feels more similar to what this one does. But overall, I felt because of that shape, it just had a little bit more control on it, which I was a huge fan of. Since we're talking about the board and rebounds and things like that, there is a difference between these two, and I told someone 6 months back when I early got this that the rebounds on these were pretty similar. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I didn't get a good enough trial against guys who could really shoot and were really shooting on this one versus this one, and when I did, the Hzrdus blocker definitely kicks out rebounds further than the Catalyst one does. It's not a Bauer level further, but it is further than what the previous True ones were, and it was really solid, and you can hear the difference as well. And I just found it's much easier punching out pucks on here that actually go out a lot hotter and harder than what was on the Catalyst line. So I do also like how this one is more of an active, bigger rebounding board, and then this one is a bit softer in case you want that, because some people evidently do. This was a very, very popular blocker in the NHL. Like Ryan Miller specifically used this blocker throughout his entire, well, I shouldn't say entire, but most of his career, this type of design, and Lefebvre made. Clearly there's people who want that as a preference, and this one kind of gives you a different option to it, so I'm happy with that. Now, also speaking with that board and kind of the rebounds on it for balance and everything, because I feel like these are very tied together. Both of these are extremely well balanced. They're both pretty light and not very heavy at all, but when you put them on, they just feel very stable on your hand. Your hand feels really well put in there and everything. You do have different hand size options and also tight and loose fit. I always order tight, which just makes this more snug back here compared to a more loose one, which would give you more room on there, just because I like my blockers being tight in there without really having to crank this strap, which mine is not cranked. And my hand just feels really snug in there. And when I make those saves, it doesn't feel like it's tilting way over. Your hand position on here is pretty neutral. So your fingers aren't way down the bottom, but you also don't have a ton of board below your fingers either. So my finger kind of comes up to here. So as you can see, it's pretty much at the bottom there. So when you are reaching for those low pucks, it doesn't really tilt over all that much because of the excellent balance and hand position of this blocker. So I really enjoyed that. And yes, you can't get slightly lower shots that you can get on some of those more aggressive where your hand's kind of up here. But its balance on this is phenomenal. And like I said, I'm a big fan of how that performs and plays. And it is one of my favorite to use in regards to that. I do feel like the Catalyst line is slightly lighter than what the Hzrdus one is. And maybe it is because of the Sidewall, which feels like it is slightly softer than what is on the Hzrdus. Maybe the board is slightly softer. I'm not sure, but this one does feel like it's slightly lighter. This is like in the grams and it's not a big difference at all. Both of them feel extremely well balanced. They both feel very light on your hand. Now, talking about that Sidewall, I mentioned how their shapes are different, and when you take a look right here, you should be able to see how they kind of line up differently as well on the board. So on the Catalyst, you can see it's inlaid inside the board, so it is sewn in under the board. You can kind of see how there is that gap, where on the Hzrdus, you can see it kind of sticks out slightly from the board, and you can see how it is attached to basically the side of the board. Now, when you look right here, you can see it where it really is attached right over there compared to what is on this one, which is more on the inside. You can see it's kind of inlaid, where the Hzrdus is really kind of right on the tip. Now, the other difference between these boards is when you look at the stability, you can see how stiff this board is, which is going to do a good job for tucking in saves into your body. It's pretty solid there and doesn't move a whole lot. That goes kind of for everywhere. This is a dense foam throughout it, and I have taken pucks off it. You can feel the dents through the foam, and I had no issues with it overall for that at all. For protection, it did a solid job. I also had no issues with protection for this one either, and you can see the difference on that Sidewall where Yes, this one is a bit softer. It still did a decent job for covering that, but it definitely was softer than what is on the Hzrdus. And up here as well, you can see how that one flexes out a lot more versus what is on the Hzrdus, which is a lot stiffer overall. But it is a slight change, and you can definitely see the shape change as well on this, where this one has this little notch right here. Its shape is just slightly different. I think the Hzrdus is solid improvement, but again, I like how these two are differentiated from each other, and they do feel and play like slightly different blockers. So I'm okay with them being different there. You just kind of have to figure out which one is your preference. Going on to the rest of the sidewall, and we have the thumb. You have a nice padded piece right here, and you have your thumb piece right here, which is I believe there's a plastic in here somewhere, and it's just solid protection piece on your thumb. It has nylon bindings everywhere in here, which have, hopefully this comes off on camera, like no wear on there. I like the nylon on here just because grip sticks don't get stuck on it. I did my whole gloss spray on sticks so they're less grippy for other blockers. This blocker and this one were the two blockers where I didn't have to do that for sticks. So I like this nylon on there just for that easier sliding, but yes, you get a little less durability in terms of, if this was just Gen Pro, like this piece right here, it would probably last slightly longer than what nylon is, but the nylon is totally fine for me on here. Continuing on to this side piece, I kind of showed off that little Gen Pro wear part on the side, which is a great touch right there. So it doesn't cut up this air mesh right here, which is all on the side, and your thumb is connected with this piece onto the sidewall right here, as well as lower down. And there is a Velcro piece in here. So when you unvelcro this, you can also unvelcro the sidewall, and you can actually get around this foam piece. I'm not going to do it for this video. I think I talked about it previously. It does have a connection piece also way down there as well, and it is connected to the index finger protection right here as well too. The index finger protection is also sewn into the wall as well. So you have multiple pieces on here holding everything kind of together, and the padding on the sidewall has also been really good. I had no issues with anything on here. Now, speaking of this little sidewall piece, so this Gen Pro really shows you how good their Gen Pro is and how soft it is by touching. You can touch it, just kind of folds in on itself. I've noticed this on the past with certain brands where you do this and this feels so plasticky and hard. This is not the case with this glove. True uses excellent materials on their equipment still, and this is a big differentiation between some brands. You can also see on this thumb piece, there is the foam back here for padding, soft density foam on here for extra dampening on the thumb. And then you have this also padded piece which connects to this cuff, which helps protection there. And so to make sure you have some padding on your actual strap right here. This is the one place I hope True adjusts, is I wish this was the soft side Velcro and this part was a sticky side Velcro, just because like I have to really crank this to cover this all the way. It's way too tight. I like wearing this looser. When I wear it looser, it's like that. That's exposed. It can rub against this nylon right here. And this one is even older, and you can see there's some rubbing on there, but that's how much is exposed. It also sometimes just like it touches your pads, it can touch your jersey. So I wish this was swapped on here so the soft side Velcro was here. It's a nitpick, but I would like to see that change. Now, when we're looking on here, you can look at the cuffs. We have my 959 cuff and 615 cuff on here, which are slightly different. The 615 is slightly more open when it's at its most closed state. So this has a piece of Velcro that attaches here, where the 959 has this piece, like it's like an inner kind of sleeve cuff with a bit, I'm gonna say extra protection on here, but really it's just like connects all the way to the thumb. That just comes up higher. So that can be adjusted and open. So when it is full tight, it is a bit tighter. I loosen that off a lot to open that up a bit, especially because of my warrior chest, which has had zero interference with. It was so good. But you can see how this thumb on the 615 doesn't come all the way up. It stops right here. And then this is just that inner cuff. So you can adjust this and really open it up if you really want to, like that, and be extremely crazy with it. But even with my massive warrior chest, this thing I never adjusted. I left it fully closed like this, and I never had problems with this getting in the way at all. You can see how this cuff kind of blooms out. It really moves nicely out of the way. It's fantastic for that. Now, when we get onto the outer kind of flap, it is very similar to what is on the 959. Open that up. You can also adjust that to open it up more. I haven't had any issues with it. I leave it like that. I did adjust it a little bit on the previous one just because with that inner cuff right there as well. Open the 959 Catalyst one up a little bit, but I didn't have to do that for the 615. And you can see overall similar cuffs, but slightly different, slightly smaller overall on this one. Doesn't get in the way at all. Phenomenal design. Since we're looking at the inside here, we look at the padding back here, and they're just a gray Nash throughout it. It does have some pilling on it, but it's really just like kind of my salt deposits from sweat It is comfortable on the backhand. It does feel like it is slightly curved. This part seems like it is slightly longer, and this part is, but I'm not sure if that's just my skin or my like wrist kind of breaking that in to do it, but it feels so snug back here that it feels like it's really well locked in place. So I'm a huge fan of it overall, to be totally honest. Going on to the materials on here, this is Suregrip, which I've talked about a lot on how True uses a better Suregrip than other companies. But I have to say, I would be dishonest if I didn't bring this up. So I always talk about how much better True's Suregrip is compared to other companies, and that is certainly the case on this blocker, which is the 9x3 one. You can see the texture details on here. I can still feel the texture after years, and even on the actually worn parts, you can still see how it has a darker color in the actual kind of grooves in there, so you can really feel the difference on it. And if you look at the index finger, you can really see that color. So that is the same Suregrip that is also on the catching glove. You can see that color and how textured that Suregrip is inside the glove itself. Now, here is the weird thing. On this blocker, you can see the lack of that color in the actual little dent. So look at the difference on these two. And it just feels like this one is much smoother on the Hzrdus than what it is on the Catalyst, and it's the same on the index finger here, and it is also the same on the thumb here. This still feels slightly textured, but I can't tell if this has actually changed or not. It certainly feels like it did, and yet it doesn't feel like it did on the catching glove, which was made at the same time. So I'm a bit confused as to how this happened. I used the same sticks between both of these. I didn't use a stick that was like taped up that would have worn it down or anything. I'm extremely curious at how this material feels differently. I went back to my initial unboxing video and comparison video of this, and this palm does look like it is closer to this one. Like you can still see the actual textured pieces in that material on the palm itself, but it doesn't look like it has that color behind it, as you can see on the Catalyst one. So I'm not totally sure what's going on with this palm, and if it is just somehow I managed to change it by wearing it and just something happened. But this palm does feel different. The Suregrip feels different than what is on the blocker I have here for the Catalyst and what is on my catching glove as well. Now, I also checked the pads, and both the pad and E-block use the same kind of Suregrip. I would be extremely dishonest if I didn't say that this does feel like it has changed, and this isn't the same material as is what is on this one. I was told by someone in the industry, not from True, that the company that makes Suregrip doesn't make it anymore. So all of the company that had the really good grippy stuff like this, which was Lefebvre, eventually that material was going to run out and they would have to go to a different company, which is why we saw the downgrade in a bunch of companies in the past. So maybe this is what happened here. I reached out to True to ask and to clarify. I haven't got a response yet, and if I do get a response from True confirming it, I will pin that in the comments for the clarification. This is a fine material. It's okay. It's just not as great as what their previous Suregrips were. It was more grippy when wet, but if True has decided to use the more limited material, which is this one, and that older material only in the gloves, that totally makes sense to me. The glove is the more important part for grip, and it's actually touching your skin, where on here, it's just the Nash part. Like this part is the part touching your skin. So I'd rather have grippy material still existing for their catching gloves rather than on the block. Going on to the rest of the fingers, True has made a slight change on the index finger, which I love. Previously, I talked about how your finger would twist like this when you close your finger, and True adjusted this by putting two attachment pieces, one on each side. So when you close it down, it closes straighter down through there. This has 3 layers on it, so you can see how many layers are in there. I think that black one is also a dampening layer on it. So it's a piece of foam, which you can also see under the palm right here. So there is that black layer. So basically you have one layer for the base palm. You have the intersection of the Nash, and then you have this layer, that layer, and then a foam piece underneath for dampening. So you have multiple layers on here, and because of that, it does make it kind of bunch up, so it doesn't close the easiest thing. You're not really ever squeezing that all that much, and it, well, for me at least, it stays out as a trigger, but closing it down, it does make it a lot more consistent coming down than what it did before. Now, if you really close this down like this, you can feel this material right here bunching up where all this stuff is. It's not the most comfortable thing. That is a very hard like squeeze to make that uncomfortable. If you're just doing it normally holding a stick, you're probably not going to have a problem, but I just wanted to call that out. The rest of the fingers are just Nash with air mesh gussets throughout it with some foam padding on the top of the fingers throughout. Nothing crazy, pretty standard throughout this. And same with the thumb. You have your air mesh on the backhand for breathability. and then you have your flat pieces of Gen Pro throughout it. I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now. I have multiple stuff for them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an ANSI level 6 for cut resistance on here. Full review of it up there so you can check it out. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description to Cutshield, buy some socks, which I think are honestly one of the better socks on the market. I absolutely love them. They're pretty thin and they are cut resistant and they're not too hot either. Use my coupon code, you get 25% off and it helps support the channel. For fingertip and everything protection, you have no issues with paddle down on this glove. I've never had issues with True gloves at all. When you look at the fingertip protection, you can see nothing has really changed here. Pretty similar between the two. Looking at this is a pretty straight one. This is pretty straight, has a bit of fingertip protection down here. But this is also a place where I would say I might wish this was a little bit better. When we look at it like this, and you can see this red is from posts. Whenever I kind of hold my body, my blocker against a post, that red is coming off from there. But you can see that this doesn't really come down and totally close this off. Makes it very easy to pick up pucks, but I do wish that this was extended and if this connection piece was kind of right here, so it would kind of pull it down a little bit more. So a change I kind of would like to see from True, just to kind of increase that fingertip protection from people jamming their sticks under you, or from post kind of crunches, and just from the errant pucks. That would be kind of nice coming down a bit. These are solid foams throughout. I just wish they were a bit bigger for that. You can also see the fingertip protection on the index finger is pretty solid. You have seen Bauer in the past have like a bit on here. That's kind of overkill, and they're, I believe, moving away from that as well. This one overall is pretty good. The fingertips down here, the rest of them could be a bit better. Now continuing on, index finger protection and sidewall protection. This blocker has that inner piece right here that I showed off. And when you hold the blocker like this, you can see how that is doing the bulk of the stopping on there. This sidewall isn't really kind of coming down to a T or anything in doing that, but this piece does follow the stick generally pretty well, especially when you're out more. Your natural shape kind of pushes this down a bit. When I'm filming this, it kind of comes up just because you don't hold your blocker like that. You kind of hold it out like this and it comes down a bit more. When you're on here, you can see puck is getting that piece right there. It is pretty solid overall because you do have this dense foam here, this dense foam here, and then that's stopping your finger from getting jammed. There isn't anything on the side, so we have seen kind of nicer implementations of this from some other companies. I maybe would like to see some foam over here. That's a nitpick. It's not a big issue. I haven't had any issues with this kind of coming in and getting jammed in there. I do still use my paddle wedge all the time anyways, but I have worn a bunch of sticks I've been testing, didn't have a paddle wedge and haven't noticed issues. But this could be maybe a bit more beef just on adding stuff onto that finger right here. Paddle down, no issues at all. You put it down, it's totally sealed. I'm not going the other view because it honestly just isn't needed for this at all, and it is totally fine. Same with that grip piece where this thing slides out so easy because there is no Gen Pro on there getting stuck, so it works really well even with the fully gripped up sticks. For protection on this, I haven't noticed a single shot come through here. Previous Bauer gloves I have in the past, like the Ultrasonic, this one I noticed absolutely nothing, and it's kind of a traditional thing with Lefebvre at this point. And True gloves, I haven't noticed a problem whatsoever coming through there. For that padding too, just to show it off, there is a pillow back here. It's this black piece. You can kind of see it getting crushed right there when I push down on it. And obviously that pillow kind of comes up under here and is the part that's padding all back here, and it works really well and solid. They also have, you can see the connection point of the palm over here. So if you did have that looser fitting, this probably would be a little bit longer, so you have more room in here. So overall, I think the Hzrdus is having a nice option compared to what the Catalyst was. This is that traditional Lefebvre designed blocker that everyone knows, a lot of people have used. It's not pushing anything crazy. It's not the biggest rebounding blocker. This isn't either, but it's pushing it more into that direction. You do have a bit hotter rebounds on this. You have a stiffer sidewall and a slight change in the sidewall design. And overall, I think you have one of the best cuff designs in the industry, especially compared to like Bauer's removing cuffs on a lot of things, and then they have a horrible design with the Hyperlight where you have to cut it out. This is so open, but also allows so much adjustability to really open this up more if you want, or to get a full wrapped one if you really wanted to. True and Lefebvre are offering a ton of options on this cuff, so you can really change it, which I think is a solid choice there. And again, huge fan of this blocker. It's not the best in terms of rebounds, and it's not the best in terms of fingertip protection, but is extremely well balanced. The quality is phenomenal. The rebounds are getting better and are solid. If I had to pick a blocker right now, this would be my number 2 probably with recent releases. The Hyperlight 2, just the rebounds on it were just stupidly good, and I talked about that and I'm a huge fan of that. This is excellent. I would never break up my set of this. This is that good, and I'd just keep wearing it over and over. It's not like I'd go to a Bauer one to get better. I know there are some NHL goalies who have done that. Well, one specifically. I wouldn't do that necessarily. I have no issues with using this whatsoever, and when I punch out rebounds with it, I don't say, man, if I punch that out foot more, or if it was a little bit harder, a goal wouldn't have happened, or that would have been better. I have noticed that in the past with the Catalyst one. This one is just slightly increased, so I think it's closer to that. So I'm a huge fan of it. Easily recommend, especially if you're buying the entire set. Easily keep it in there. So that's about it for this review of the True Hzrdus PX4 blocker review. If this review was helpful and you want to see me review more content, please reach out to True on social media. Let them know Hockey Reviews review of their gear is helpful and help you make a purchase. It'd be greatly appreciated on my end. So let them know. Doing this helps me as well as helps them, and they should continue to do it. If you want to see me review any type of hockey equipment, always reach out to the companies on social media. It's happened in the past where companies have reached out and said, hey, we want to send you this to review, because people have been asking specifically Hockey Reviews to review our stuff. So it'd be greatly appreciated on my end. So hopefully I can keep making content and doing more videos like this. Thank you very much for watching this channel. Remember to like this video, subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are in the description. If you want to support the channel and you're buying hockey equipment anyways, you can check out the links in the description to Pure Hockey and Hockey Supremacy. If you're in Canada, check out the links to Hockey Supremacy. If you're in the US, to Pure Hockey. Clicking those links, making a purchase, it gives me a kickback, helps support the channel so I keep making more content and doing more videos. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel without buying anything hockey specifically, you click the links in the description to Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel so I can keep making more content and doing more reviews. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.